So how do you react to those? Are you the type, and I ask pitchers this a lot of times, if they get blown out, like, especially if I've never covered them before, it's important. Like, do you
Yeah.
watch tape? Do you like have to cry about it? Do you go in the fetal position in the corner? Like, how do you adapt? Do you need to take a break from it? Because how do you react to those moments?
If I feel like I didn't handle something well, I will go to people in the industry that I trust and that I know have my best interest in mind. And I will say, how could I have handled this better? And, I think the word mentor gets overused now, but having a couple of people in your corner that will be, that like you, and they're going to be tactful, but will be honest and will say, next time you're in this situation, one of those people for me is Kevin Burkhardt. Kevin, of course, number
Oh,
one
he's the best.
NFL Fox,
Yeah.
and then he's unbelievable. Just we could do a whole podcast on how great KB is, but him doing pregame and postgame for Fox Baseball with Big Poppy and Jeter and A-Rod, and just having to adjust on the fly, and then calling a Super Bowl, and now he's gonna he was the Mets reporter. He's somebody that I trust, again, not only because he's a great person, because he's my friend, but I will ask him how I could have handled a report better or how I should handle a particular situation, and he will shoot me straight. So whatever industry you work in, it's important to have people that you trust, that you can bounce things off of. And I think the difference is, if the average person makes a mistake, it's not going to go viral, or there's, if somebody makes a mistake at an office job, you can go home and forget about it. It's a little bit different with live TV. So have people that you trust that you can bounce things off of, for sure.
I always joke, like, you just get to hang out in your cubicle at your 9 to 5, Joe. Like, nothing's gonna happen to you. Like, you're chilling. Well, when it came to KB and these other people, were they easy for you to find early on? Because you have, like, it's hard to find. You mentioned the term mentor. I'm right there with you. Mentor just seems kind of outdated, but were they easy for you to find, or did you find them? They found you? What was the scenario there?
I mean, it's difficult when you're a young reporter, even if you're extroverted. You have to possess a little bit of, you have to be able to be vulnerable and go up and be like, hey, it doesn't matter if it's a man, a woman, if they're 5 years older than you, if they're 20 years older than you, to say, well, are you willing to give me some of your time and help me get better? And so, I wouldn't call it easy, because you don't click with everybody, but when you do click with somebody, again, that has your best interest in heart, and this too, Jess, it's a competitive business, and people do not always play nice. Women do not always play nice, nor do men, but
I have more stories about women than I do men in this industry, so I get it. Yes.
So it's all very tricky, but I think you have to put yourself out there, and when somebody you see, they have the big boy seat or the big girl seat, whether that is a Laura Rutledge or a Cassidy Hubbarth or Kevin Burkhardt, or if you want to do play-by-play, Joe Buck, whatever, you have to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I love what you do, I like the way you do it, and I was wondering if I could have 15 minutes of your time. And sometimes it's a one-off and you never talk to them again, but sometimes it can develop into a really cool friendship or mentor-mentee type thing.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned the term vulnerable and vulnerability, because I'm back in therapy and it's beautiful. And I feel like there's so many different ways that you can use vulnerability, and just like that. So in addition to reaching out to people, which you're right, it's when people think of vulnerability, they're like, I'm just very open and honest with how I'm feeling. Like, no, there's so many different avenues to it. Just like you said, like, there's like, I don't even know, like a weird approach there, that you have to be a little vulnerable and ready to be turned down, right? So how else do you use vulnerability in your daily life, both with your career and, personal life, maybe?
My therapist would tell you that I am not good at being vulnerable, but that is a different story. Right? She's not wrong. No, I mean, with all seriousness, career-wise, you have to be vulnerable in order to make it in this industry, because you're it's kind of a numbers game, especially when you're starting out. I'm sure you remember, like, you're sending your resume tape, your resume reel to 50 news stations.
Yes.
And you're getting rejected for a good 45 of them, if not all 50 at first. And then as you get up the top, even as you start having success, you still have to be vulnerable enough to try something different on TV. And you know, how many times, like, start a segment or do a report that might be a little bit interesting, and you're kind of like putting yourself out there to do it. But if you don't do it, there's no reward. Like, what are you just going to do the same thing every day? That's boring. So I think we have to, in our careers. Do you like Brene Brown? I feel like you might.
I love Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. Yeah.
I just recommend everybody read her or watch her TED Talks if reading isn't your thing, on being vulnerable and using it in the workplace to, you know, whether it's having difficult conversations or just putting yourself out there. And in media, it's like, you got to risk it to get the biscuit. You do have to do some things that are different and unique sometimes to stand out. I think what you're doing is super unique. And I think, you know, they're, like we've talked about, there not being a ton of women in the radio space. And even I think in podcasting, it's still male dominant. So in a way, like, you're being vulnerable because you know the things people say on the internet. I know the things people say on the internet. So I think I just try to use it to make myself better, and understanding that the rejection of not getting a job, or the rejection of, man, I tried to do this different, funny, or this introspective interview and it just didn't work out. But that's part of it. I think that you have to take those risks for sure.